Greetings, gentlemen and ladies. I am the Crypto Game Snob, and in this video, I thought it would be kind of fun just to look at the nature cards, some of the most powerful nature cards from the Divine Order set. If you like playing nature, this might be a video that you find kind of interesting. This is not going to be a top 5 or top 10 or anything like that. Nothing ranked, because that's sort of relative to what deck you're playing. Different cards can be weak in certain decks and very powerful in other decks. But this is just going to be kind of a look at some very powerful nature cards. Just kind of general off the cuff. Here we go. Let's kick things off. Now, Vicious Manticore. Honestly, this is not one that I would rank as being powerful. In theory, that Blitz and Overkill seems good at the end of your turn. If you're frenzied, deal 3 damage to your opponent's god. I honestly think this card needs a bit of a buff. This needs to have a bit more stats for 5/3. By comparison, something like Orcish Elite with Twin Strike and Overkill, not Overkill, but Twin Strike and Blitz, is just a much stronger 5 mana card than our 4/3 Vicious Manticore. This, probably best case scenario, will hit 1 card and kill it, and then there's not much overkill left after 4 damage. I mean, maybe if you're trying to take out zombies in a zombie death deck, that might be kind of alright. But I haven't used this card. I haven't really seen this card used. This card I think needs a bit of buffing, especially for an epic card. Yeah, it just needs a little bit more damage. A little bit more damage to do something with that overkill. That's my opinion. Watchtower of Ecuador. Now, I really like this card. I don't use it all the time, but when it gets on the board, it can be difficult to remove. This is a backline with 2/8 stats. Right, so if you have any sort of creatures in front of this, to get to this card, and 6 mana is still fairly early on, to get to this card can be kind of tricky. To get through 8 health, it can be kind of a lot of health to get through in terms of, like, oh, let's say Star Shard Bolt or something like that, right? Some sort of even Worm's Breath, what the hell is that? Worm's Breath. Why am I forgetting the 5 damage dragon fire breath spell? I forget what it's called. That's okay. Anyway, Watchtower of Ecuador. So this card is quite sticky to clear once you get it on the board, especially if you can pip that out, on turn 5.5. And then you have the ability to summon an Ecuador Protector each turn, which is a 3/5 stat frontline with 1 regen. That's a nice amount of frontline to get for free every single turn. That's like a 4 mana frontline that you get for free every single turn. Or you get 3 Vibrant Fruits that all have 1/1 stats, and they give 1/1 to your strongest creature when they die. So, I mean, you're basically getting 6/6 stats every single turn, a bonus 6/6 stats out of that. Tainted Treant, of course, is a good value generating card. You can get more cards out of that. So you don't see this card played a lot. Typically, I think because most nature decks want to finish the game and end the game around 6 mana, 7 mana type thing, and so making the game last longer with something like Watchtower of Ecuador isn't really in the meta, but I have a feeling at some point this card might get more into the meta, and it's a very powerful card when you get it on the board. Guerrilla Gardener, just because it's so high, it's 8 mana. It doesn't really see a lot of play in nature decks. In theory, this sounds really good. It's got backline Blitz, Overkill. After this creature destroys an enemy creature, summon a 1/1 Vibrant Fruit. So if you use this to overkill a bunch of zombies, this could be a game ender for zombie death decks. But the thing is, it's 8 mana, so it's quite a ways up there. Still good in theory, but doesn't see a lot of use. Sip from Spring is much better than it looks. For 3 mana, you're thinking, okay, you only get 2/2, right? But it's surprising how much of a difference that plus 2/2 can make. It really is. To put that on a creature that hasn't attacked yet that turn, it can be very game momentum swinging. Sip from Spring is actually very useful in a lot of situations, and you can pip into that from mana 2. Pip into that, drop that on the board, and then buff up your boar or your marsh walker or something like that. Make it nice and big early on. Yeah, Sip from Spring, interesting option. And then of course, if you're frenzied, you get an additional plus 2 mana, so you get this basically for 1 mana. You have something on the board like marsh walker already. It hits their opponent's face. It triggers frenzy. You play this for basically 1 mana. You play another creature on the board. It's better than it looks, and better than the price of it. Man, 7 cents for this card. That's actually a very good card. Mooncrazed Cyclops. This one breaks my heart a little bit. This used to be so powerful. I guess it was a little bit too powerful, but now it almost feels a little bit underpowered. Now, it is still basically as good basically as good as a 5/5 Rhino, right? Which is the other option that some players are putting into their deck. That being said, it's not that hard to get frenzied for the most part, and this creature does get +1/+1 every time, at the end of each round that it is frenzied. It's certainly a far cry from where it used to be, but I think it is still a good card. It's just not an amazing card anymore. Mooncrazed Cyclops. This one kind of hurts my heart to see it get debuffed like it did, but still a decent, let's say a decent card. A decent card. Snapping Turtle is just such an interesting card. I have never once used it. It's just got too low of health for 6 mana. There's basically not a lot that's not going to kill this, right? Like, you might be able to, kill some small creatures, but at 6 mana, there's not going to be that many small creatures left. I don't know. I feel like this needs a couple more points of health to really be viable. It could be a really good card, maybe at like even 6/3 or something like that. It would be potentially very interesting. Just 6/2 is so small in terms of health. 6/3 or 6/4 maybe. I don't know. This needs to be reworked a little bit. Ominous Burrow. Now this sounds theoretically interesting. It's got backline and it's 3 mana at the start of your turn. Summon a random 5 mana creature onto your deck. Now the problem is that this only has 4 mana, or 4 health rather. And it's not that difficult to clear a 4 health creature, even at 2 mana, even if you pip into this. It's not that difficult to clear, so most of the time this card is going to just be cleared immediately, and your opponent knows they need to clear this immediately, and so they're going to make every effort to do so. I have had this successfully used on me once. It was game swinging when it went off, but you actually have to get this so early on for this to be useful. I mean, if you play it later in the game, okay, but most probably it'll still get cleared even more easily. It's just very difficult to stick. And so difficult to make that one work. If it were 1/5, suddenly this would become an amazing card. This would be a lot more difficult to clear, but at 1/4, there's a lot of stuff that can clear that. So it's hard to get to stick. Crescent Werewolf is very interesting in that if you're summoning like blade flies, or even Dogs Unchained or something like that, something that drops down 3 cards, you get another 1 mana for each one of those multiple summons that you play. So you play Blade Flies for 4 mana, and this creature, if that's on your board, that gives you 3 mana back. Sorry, you play Blade Flies for 4 mana, this gives you 3 mana back, and you can do something else as well. So this is interesting, but it suffers from stats at only 2/4. It suffers from being very easy to take off the board. It's still situationally kind of an interesting one. Here we go, now we're talking. The giant pangolin. This is basically in all nature decks these days just because it is so powerful. It is so good. It doesn't feel overpowered, but it does feel very, very powerful. Blitz, Confused, Armor 2. It actually feels like a very well-balanced but powerful card to me. You never feel like you're overpowered when you play it, but at the same time you're always happy to get it. Just Blitz, Blitz with 2 armor makes it fairly difficult to kill, but not, ridiculously so. Not like the old Guild Enforcer at 5 mana with its 2 armor. That was just so early on that you could get Guild Enforcer. By the time we're up to 6 mana, there's a lot more that can take this out, and 7 mana is just around the corner, etc., etc. That being said, Giant Pangolin is a very, very good card, maybe one of the best cards in nature right now. Speaking of one of the best cards in nature right now, Finian Fruit Bearer. If you can get this to stick and go off a couple times, this is already a very solid 2/3 stat card. Best case scenario, you've got 2/4 with no text on your card, right? So 2/3 stats is very good, but you also get a 1/1 Vibrant Fruit, which also gives +1/1 when it dies. So as long as you can get this frenzied one time, you're basically getting the equivalent of a 4/5 stat card, right? When you add in the Vibrant Fruit. Now that's if it only goes off once. If you get it off multiple times, this can start to build up and up. If you happen to keep this on the board a little bit and your Vibrant Fruit starts buffing it up, suddenly you have like a bigger Finian that's much more difficult to clear and continues to drop more fruit. This card can spiral out of control pretty easily. That being said, it also still doesn't feel overpowered. Most games you play this, you'll lose it quite quickly and quite easily, but that being said, it has potential to be very powerful, and worst case scenario, it is very good at 2/3, 2 mana. Nothing wrong with that in the worst case scenario. So definitely one of the most powerful cards in nature, definitely one of the best. Now this is kind of not a card you see used very often. Actually, you can see the purchase history has kind of gone up recently. Maybe some people are kind of catching on to how powerful the Spiny Porcupine can actually be. At armor 4, this seems underwhelming, right? But then one of the interesting things about this is that when you combine this with something like Swelling Boon, or something like what the hell is it? Anything that buffs up its health. Something like Moonlight Charm, something like Sip from Spring, something like Guerrilla Training, or Thrill of the Hunt. Was it Thrill of the Hunt? No, Hop On. Something like Hop On, which gives it +3 and Overkill. If you can get a little bit more health on this card and a little bit more damage on this card, it becomes such a threat to deal with at 4 armor, so hard to take out. I have used Swelling Boon on this card to such great success and built such a scary, overpowered porcupine that is just so hard to deal with. And the other interesting thing about this is actually it's very good at dealing with confused creatures. So if you're playing nature versus nature and you have confused creatures like blade flies attacking you, oftentimes they miss their target, they hit this thing, and after this creature survives an attack, deal 2 damage to the enemy creature that attacks. So confused creatures don't want to attack this, especially if they're like blade flies, right? Because they can't get through the armor. But if they're confused, they don't often have a choice. So you drop this down on the board, it almost acts like a front line that can't be killed if you're dealing with confused creatures that don't have at least 4 damage, right? So this is a very interesting card. I wouldn't necessarily say it's the most powerful, but in certain decks it can be very, very powerful. The Blessed Moose. This Brazen Moose is just a huge card at 6/6 with Blessed and Confused. Blessed, of course, is great. You get some more favor. You take your opponent's favor away, whatever the case may be. And 6/6 at 5 mana is just about as big as it gets. You know, I think maybe Death has some ridiculous 5 mana drops that have very serious downsides, like the Rotted one. But for Confused, which everything on nature is confused anyway, this is just a huge card. A huge card to drop down and yeah, just have a big threat on the board. Now this is one also that doesn't see a lot of play. I also really like this card. I have won many games with this card. That give +3 armor to a random friendly creature is huge, and 4 mana is actually quite a bit of mana, but it is worth it. If you can drop this on something like a Pyramid Warden, or anything really like a Guild Enforcer, anything frontline, whatever the case may be, like I was talking about before, Spiny Porcupine, give that 7 armor, or something ridiculous, give that Swelling Boon, swelling armor, you can create a creature that becomes so undeal-withable. Basically, your opponent needs some sort of armor clear to deal with it, and you don't see a lot of armor clear currently in the meta. Now, Feral Cat is kind of interesting, certainly far from overpowered or anything like that, but what's nice about it is that it's a decently solid 2/1 stat card. But what it does is it deals 1 damage to your opponent's face. And now nature has sort of a hard time triggering Frenzy at will, just sort of easily, right? Reaching past frontline, reaching past creatures, and just sort of hitting face when it needs to, like Soulburn or Slayer decks, right? So that Feral Cat, if you can drop that and then pip into a Swelling Boom or something like that, that can be a good way to get that Overkill Frenzy proc and just basically win the game, right? Okay, next up we have actually one of my favorites, the Moonlight Charm. This is extremely powerful when this goes off correctly, and pretty much it always does. If you drop this early on in the game, if you pip into this, if you drop down a Marshwalker, pip into this on turn 2, use your Marshwalker to trigger that Frenzy. Now you've suddenly got a 3/6 Marshwalker. Next turn that becomes a 5/8, and it kind of, 5/8, and then, it's even got another round of +2/+2. If you need to, you can swing with this as well and trigger that Frenzy and get one less turn out of it. But that's something that sometimes you can do in a pinch, just to trigger that Frenzy effect, give your creature +2/+2 for 3 mana. Getting +6/+6 stats on a creature for 3 mana is a huge value. That's a very powerful game-swinging card right there, Moonlight Charm. Sage of Renewal I haven't really played with much, so I'm not even going to comment on it. Low-hanging fruit is kind of good. This is a nice little, like, 1 health creature card clear, Shadow of Lethanon or something like that, right? Deal 1 damage to a random enemy creature with the least health, so this will specifically target anything that's low in health, like those 1 mana creatures that you might be trying to clear. And then summon a 1/1 Vibrant Fruit, which then buffs up your next character when it dies, +1/+1. So for 1 mana, you're doing 1 damage, and then you're getting 2/2 stats out of it, right? Which is actually kind of interesting. It's not too bad. It's certainly not a bad card. We've already looked at Mooncrazed Cyclops, Blood and Bone, kind of a similar idea in triggering that frenzy, getting a nature card added to your hand. Starving Sabertooth, I don't play a lot, but this is basically your ogre, your 4 or 5 stat ogre, right? Which is about as big a stat as you can get. After the creature attacks a creature of your frenzied, gain +1 regen, right? So this has interesting potential to stack up that regen, because it doesn't say there's any cap to that. This just says after your creature attacks a creature, if you're frenzied, gain 1 regen. So if you had any sort of health regen on this, like Swelling Boon or something like that, or if you had armor on this, like the aspect of Pangolin, and you could continue to attack with this could potentially be a very powerful, difficult to clear card. That being said, it doesn't see a lot of play, maybe not deservedly so. Maybe this should see more play. I should probably play around with that, because I haven't actually been playing with it much. I haven't seen it played all that much, but theoretically it's very interesting. I haven't played much with this one, so I'm not even going to comment on this. Ability to give all creatures burn +1 and give -1. Now this is, unfortunately it says all creatures, not all enemy creatures, so you also take out your own creatures, which I don't know why might be good. Maybe it could be good in certain situations when you're trying to come from behind, but burn +1 is not a huge amount. Alright, let's skip to possibly one of the most game-ending, powerful cards in nature these days. This is Sudden Bloom. And this, when triggered with Overkill, gives +5/+5, Overkill, and Twin Strike. This is ridiculous. So if you have even 1 card on the board and you can hit your opponent's face with this, you can start out by hitting their face, you can drop this card, then you get the Twin Strike proc, +5/+5, and Overkill, and you can use your next swing to basically overkill a bunch of smaller creatures, or whatever the case may be. Not to mention +5/+5 is a huge stat buff if you drop this on anything, really. Something like Porcupine with armor, or a Pangolin, or even like I've dropped this on a green giant from time to time, made the biggest, scariest, most unpleasantly horrifying giant you've ever seen. This is an extremely powerful game-ending card that can wipe boards, go overkill through boards, knock out your opponent's god. It can do everything. It's just such a powerful card. Yeah, Sudden Bloom, amazing. Anyway, Falling Star, this is kind of interesting. This recently got an upgrade from what I hear. Now this is a 5 mana, basically 6/6 card, worst case scenario, right? Because you get 3 badgers that summon out of it. Now if you play this with something like a werewolf that we saw earlier on, you can of course also refresh mana when using this. So if you happen to have a werewolf on the board and you throw this down, you'll get 3 mana back. But even if you don't, even if you just get +2, even if you get 3 badgers that all get +1 strength, so they become 2/2 badgers, right? +2/2 badgers, and you also put a burn on your opponent's strongest creature, right? +6 burn is a huge burn, so that card's going to be cleared off the table very soon. And any other creatures also on the board also get +1 strength. So this buffs, it knocks down your opponent's strongest creature, and it gives you basically 6/6 worth of stats, which is very solid. So Falling Star is actually very interesting. Very good card. What else have we got here? We have the Celestial Stag. Now this is also a great card, very solid at 3/3 stats. It has Blessed, of course, which gives you some favor, takes away your opponent's favor, and after you play your first card each turn, and that even includes the same turn that you drop this down, you can add a random nature card to your hand. So it's very powerful, solid stat, value generating card with Blessed. All in all, there's just nothing wrong with this card. This is just a great card, Celestial Stag. Here we have, this is actually a good one if you're playing like an Amazon focused deck, General or Orthaya, I'm not sure how to say that, but she has Frontline with summon 2/2 Amazon recruits, and then give each of your other Amazons +2/+2 and Twin Strike. Now this is kind of later in the game. This is sort of a finisher card if you're playing an Amazon focused deck. It doesn't see a lot of play, but powerful in an Amazon focused deck. What else have we got here? Now this one theoretically could be good, but there's just actually some better options at 6 mana with your Blitzy Pangolin or your Green Giant or whatever the case may be. But still, Twin Strike, 7/7, and if you're frenzied, you get 1 armor on this creature, making it, you know, quite a bit more difficult to clear. The Raging Giant, theoretically, I think is underused even by myself, but a very solid card, very solid creature. Let's see, what else have we got? We seem to just be kind of going through the list of things. That's what we're doing here today. I think that might be it. You know, I think that actually might be most of our Divine Order cards. And yeah, I think that might actually conclude this video. Alright, unless I see anything else here. Yeah, no, that's it. That's all of the Divine Order cards for nature. So, yeah, okay, hope you guys have enjoyed this breakdown, and I'll see you in the next video.